just want to give a brief note before our opening. There's a whole lot of talk about freedom, much of it from a group of hostile people who are arrogantly invoking freedom to justify their immoral behavior. It appears that they want the freedom to rob people of their humanity with racial slurs and to do so with impunity. The freedom to exploit people for power, profit, and dominion over those they feel that are beneath them. Today's opening reflects another take on freedom, freedom that uplifts and inspires the spirit and urges us to be our authentic selves in the spirit of our ancestors and the sacrifices they made on our behalf for our freedom.
That's it.
You believe in freedom, cannot rest until it comes. You believe in freedom, cannot rest. Hear me talking to you. We who believe in freedom, cannot rest until it comes.
Straight to plantation, subhuman condition. Sugar cane cutting, cotton buds we picking, walking all day. 400 years without no pay. Juneteenth emancipation. Juneteenth is a celebration. Juneteenth emancipation. Juneteenth was a What does it mean to be free? Are you born with it? Is it God-given? Or is there a cost to be free? The Constitution said we were 3/5 human. How can it be democracy built on stolen land? Freedom is a right, not a privilege. Freedom from false restrictions. Skin color, birthplace, respect the ways we're all different. Let's take it back about 100 years. Quick, let me paint this picture. America in the Civil War, no Marvel movie, this history. President Lincoln had a plan to end slavery only in the South. But black folks, when they heard about it, start spreading that word of mouth. Picked up arms and joined the Union to fight for their own freedom. The colored troops helped win the war, gave the proclamation new meaning. Yeah, you better believe it. Do you know the story of Juneteenth? When the enslaved found out that they were free. 2 years after 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation. Justice. When have we seen it and known it? Who are the ones who have grown it? Oh, freedom, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave. And go home to my Lord and be free.
The blackness, keep on. Never say die, keep on. Blackness, keep on. Never say die, keep on. Blackness, never say die, never say die.
Amin Rahatap Jose. I am Minister in Training, Rana Thurston. Thank you, Baba Jeff, so much. I was jamming over here. I wasn't expecting that, and it was a nice way to get me going this morning. I appreciate it. I want to ask you all to bear with me with regard to my background situation. I got posters from marches and everything else going on over here, but I'm having some problems with my internet, so I'm using my phone, which hopefully will be more reliable. Welcome to Wose. Welcome to Wose today for all of you who are members, regular visitors, friends of friends. Welcome if you have not been with us before. We are glad to have you. We are a family by choice, by designation, by nation. We are family, and together we are stronger. Next, we're going to have our affirmation with Mama Darnisha and MIT Bill. Please come forward, and then after that, to be new gatherers, you are going to be up.
We will know God's truth to be free and self-determined. Creator, help us to remember the humanity, glory, and suffering of our ancestors and to honor the struggle of our elders. Let us strive to bring new vision and life to our people. Let there be peace and harmony among us.
Let us be loving, sharing, and creative. Let us work, study, and listen so we may learn, teach, and cultivate self-reliance.
Grant us power, O Holy One, as we struggle to resurrect our hearts and our homeland.
We will raise our children according to the needs of our nation, with discipline, patience, devotion, and courage. We will strive to be the living models of the new direction of our people.
We are an African people.
We are children of God.
Ashe.
Shay. Thank you so much, Baba Tai. To be new cultural gatherers, please come forward.
Well, greetings, Rose family.
Greetings.
It's a pleasure always to be here with Rose. My name is Brian P. Bowling.
And I am Zakia G.E.K. Park Bowling.
And we are the To Be New Cultural Gatherers. We have something special planned for you today. We would like to feature some works from my wife's new book. Zakia, would you like to tell us about your new book?
Yes, I definitely want to tell you about my book. So my book is entitled Ghana on My Mind, Poetic Reflections on Journeying to the Motherland. And back in...
Uh-oh.
You just turned your sound off.
Okay, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, go right ahead, honey.
Okay. So back in 2018, I traveled to Ghana with other poets. We are the West Oakland to West Africa International Poetry Exchange. And in Ghana, we performed poetry. And I'd like to let you know that when I got back, I wrote this book. Hadn't planned on writing a book. But Bryant and I have created from my book a production that we have been working on, and we'd like to share excerpts today from that work. Brian has composed 2 songs. Well, he has composed the songs for this production. Today he will sing 2 of them, and I will read 2 of the stories from my book.
The first song that I would like to perform that I wrote for Zakia's book, Ghana on My Mind, is called The Door of No Return.
And my story is entitled Stepping into My Elderhood at the Enslavement Dungeons.
I was asked as an elder to offer up a prayer. We were down in Cape Coast dungeons, and the spirit of our ancestors were there. And we heard from the spirits, they cries and yearns as they went through the door of no return. Everyone there among us knew exactly how they felt, being trapped down in this dungeon where they couldn't help themselves. Some souls didn't make it, but strong they stood firm as they went through the door of no return. The door of no return. The door of no return. We heard from our ancestors, they cries and they yearn. Some souls didn't make it, but the strong they stood firm as we went through the door of no return.
We visited the enslavement dungeons and it was heart-wrenching to see where our ancestors were held captive. In Ghana, on the Atlantic Ocean, right on the beautiful coast of Elmina and Cape Coast. The Europeans built the dungeons and called them castles. In those extremely small, dark, damp dungeons, our ancestors were chained, shackled, and locked up. The only light that entered from the outside was through a tiny hole on the ground level. Hundreds of Africans were packed on top of one another in these dungeons where they ate, defecated, and slept. They did not receive any sunshine, adequate air, or exercise. Then, after months of stewing in those horrible prisons, they were thrown into the bowels of a ship sailing for a new country. I walked around the tiny space that used to cage hundreds of our ancestors. There were only 10 of us in our group, and yet even we had barely enough space to move around. I looked closely at the inhumane, rock-hard walls, floor, and ceiling. I imagined their suffering. My eyes swelled with water, but I was so overwhelmed with shock that my tears didn't fall. We knew the ancestors were present. We visited with their spirits and shared the food we brought to feed them. During the libation ceremony, we prayed and meditated while calling out their names. Sister Amicus, our guide, asked for the elders in the group to step forward and give homage to our ancestors. Being the eldest, I stepped forward. I didn't know I would be called upon to speak, and I had no idea of what to say. Yet, the words came and flowed from my mouth effortlessly. Honoring the ancestors was a spiritual epitome for me, an auspicious moment in time. I was very blessed and very thankful to have such privilege and freedom.
The door of no return. The door of no return. We heard from our ancestors their cries and their yearns. Some souls didn't make it, but the strong they stood firm as they went through the door of no return. No return. No return. No return.
Ashe. Now, did I understand they were going to do 2 songs and 2 poems, or is it just one?
The tribute is next, and then they'll do a song.
Okay, okay. So next up, then, we're going to have Minister Alicia come forward with the historical tribute. Thank you so much. I know she's there. I just saw her writing.
I am here. Oh. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get my son to.
Do you need assistance, Minister?
Yes, is my son on? Is my son have sharing capabilities?
He does. He does,
Okay.
Minister.
Can you share it? So while he's getting that, I'm just gonna talk quickly until he gets it on. So my historical tribute, I was very excited to give it today, and it's on a brother named Moses McCormick. And a lot of times we like to choose historical figures that are like historical history, like back. This brother, he was young, and he just recently passed 2021. And so I wanted to give him a tribute because of the simple fact that I had just learned about him, and then within months he had passed away. So I was in shock. I was like, no, because when you first learn of someone, and they and you're feeling like they're really great and amazing, and then they pass, it's like it comes as a shock. So Kobe, can you share the screen? I'm trying to get my tablet wasn't able to do it, so I was trying to get some help to do it. Let's see. Seems like he's getting ready to. There it goes. So Moses McCormick, inspirational polyglot, expert in the art of speech. Next slide. So when I was doing this, it made me think of a passage in 2000 Seasons, and in this part of 2000 Seasons, the young people had been stolen from Africa and put into the belly of the ship. And so it says, among the men, Lenny emerged earliest. Talking gently, he asked if there were any among us who understood more than their own particular language. That question brought the first sound of laughter on the ship. For one of the others who knew our language asked Lenny what kind of fool would be found alive who only spoke one language. Other mouths unsealed themselves. 7 languages, we found, were sufficient to reach every spirit there with us. And for these 7 languages, we had over 30 who could turn one into the other, experts in the arts of speech. Next slide. As an American-born African, I fall into the category of Carter G. Woodson's Miseducation of the Negro. So despite the meager attempts of the school district, I have been exposed to a few languages, Spanish, French, and Japanese, but can only speak fluently one, English, with any level of confidence. However, I love languages and have varying success in knowing Spanish, Twi, Kiswahili, Yoruba, Arabic, and most recently, Medu Neter. Go back. One more forward. Okay, he's all over the place. Thank you. Being a serious student of YouTube University, I ran into a YouTuber named Moses McCormick. On his channel, he was living my dream. He was doing what I always wanted the ability to do, but had neither seen anyone do, nor had known of anyone who had even the desire to attempt. He is a polyglot. Next slide. So I just wanted to put some definitions up. If you speak two languages, you're called bilingual, 3 languages, trilingual, 4+ languages. You'd either be called multilingual or a polyglot. The differences being of a multilingual person is one that knows languages due to practicality, whether they grew up speaking different languages or their circumstances have them learning or learning or like work opportunities, learning the different languages. A polyglot, the number of languages that they speak is an outcome of the conscious choice of learning languages as a genuine labor of love. It is associated with being fascinated with languages. Next slide. So this is Moses Manuel McCormick. He was born in Akron, Ohio on March 12, 1981. His mother is Susan McCormick Dukes. He was shy and quiet growing up and liked to fish and play fighting games like Mortal Kombat. He began to be interested in languages and cultures around 18 years old. It was then when he began to study Chinese because he loved Kung Fu movies. He taught himself a variety of language. He was able to speak 20 comfortably, but was able to converse on various levels in over 50 different languages and dialects. Next slide. Laoshu 55,000. So Moses's channel was called Laoshu 55,000, and his nickname was Laoshu, meaning mouse in Chinese. He gained his popularity by speaking several languages with native speakers that he would meet in public places. Then he would successfully conversate with someone in their native tongue. He would call that leveling up. This attracted over 1 million viewers to his channel. Next slide. So when he first began learning languages, he noticed that most of the books and the classes didn't teach students how to prepare for real-world conversations. So he offered lessons and tips on language learning on his channel and eventually developed the FLR method of language learning, which stands for Foreign Language Road Running. His method begins with memorizing full conversational sentences rather than drilling on language basics. Next slide. So Moses McCormick, aka Laoshu, touched many people's lives, whether they're an aspiring language learner like myself or an unassuming person he'd run into and connect with by speaking their language, delighting them with his awesome pronunciation. So if you were to see the videos, you would see like he would just go up and start talking to people. And then after a while, he was able to kind of connect to where that person might be from. And he would ask them where they were from. And then begin to just speak to them in their language. And you should see the reactions that's coming from people because of this man can come and connect with them with their language. So Laoshu, he passed on March 4th, 2021 at the age of 39. It said that he died from heart complications. His brother Mark disagrees and believes that he was murdered, saying that he had no heart problems and he was a very healthy person. But in his life, Moses McCormick, he really did touch a lot of people's lives just by doing what he loved to do. So that's why I honor him as an ancestor on this day, as a historical tribute for this day, because the fact that the way he lived his life was inspirational to me, for the simple fact that he did this because he loved it. He shared it with people. He built on it by filling a need that he saw with people learning different languages. And that's one thing as Americans, sometimes we may not know other languages and other cultures as well, because that's not an American thing. So he surprised so many people. They were like, oh my gosh, so and their hearts were lifted up. And I was very excited about that. Next slide. So this is not a complete list of languages that he communicated in, but as you can see, if you're reading them, there were a lot of them, and they span the globe. He knew some African language like Wolof, Zulu, Somali, And he knew a lot of Asian languages, Sudanese, Chinese, Sri Lankan, Mongolia. Like, he spanned the globe, and he kind of was able to, even on one of the videos, he was able to speak to someone in a very, very remote dialect. And that person was so overjoyed. But of course, he was most fluent in Mandarin Chinese because that was the first one that he began to be interested in, like we talked about earlier with the kung fu movies. But this is not a complete list of that he has that he knows, but this is a lot of the ones that he was able to communicate with people with. Next slide. So this is a short video. I'm hoping it plays well. Go ahead and play it if you can.
Take yourself off mute, Kobe.
You have to unmute yourself. I don't know if he's hearing me. Well, you guys can kind of read it and let's see if he can unmute himself.
Start again, okay, Alicia? Have him start again.
What was that?
Okay, so what you just saw, he was in a random store, and he saw some people. He just went up to them, start talking to them, and he was able to communicate with them in Somali. And like in the picture, it's stuck on this one. He was talking to this man and talking to him in Korean because he thought he was from Korea. And after a while, he realized that the man spoke Spanish. So he switched over to Spanish, and him and the man just ended up talking. So I just want to, you can stop sharing. I just wanted to give that historical tribute to Moses McCormick, a self-taught master of his craft. Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you so much, Minister Alicia. I was seeing in the notes that some people previously followed him, and he was somebody that I had seen a couple of videos of before, although I didn't necessarily follow him. And I always find it interesting, especially if you speak other languages, in particular third world country languages. It's amazing because when you speak another person's language, the first thing that they ask you, usually in English, is how do you speak my language? And that always strikes me as strange because it's like, okay, you're speaking to me in English, which is not your first language, asking me why I speak yours. So it's just, it's interesting that it's rare enough that you get that response. And it's also just so interesting that we just do not think, not we, because we're not the ones running it, but in the schools, it's really not thought about to teach people just naturally or automatically. It's another one of those things thrown in the elective pile that we don't look at as an actual necessity or even a cultural obligation. So thank you so much for bringing that forward and just putting that back on the forefront of our minds. I appreciate it. Next up, we're going to bring forward again a song by To Be New Cultural Gatherers, and then that's going to be followed by Litany of Sacrifice and Prayer by Mama Michelle and Baba Damani. So To Be New Cultural Gatherers, if you would please come forward first.
Greetings. It's a pleasure to be back. Our second song for this afternoon service is a song again written for my wife's book. Share your book, honey. Gone on My Mind. And we'll put something in the chat if people are interested in finding out how they can purchase the book, we will put something in the chat afterwards. But the song I would like to do now is a song I've written for her book, and it's called Fish Away, Fish Away.
My story is entitled Ghanaian Fishing Village.
Took a walk on a Ghanaian beach one bright and sunny day. Came across a fishing village and we stopped a while to stay. Fish away, that bright and sunny day. Fish away, that's what the fishermen say. As we sat upon the rocks and watched the children play, the breeze blew gently from the mountaintops that bright and sunny day. Fish away, that bright and sunny day. Fish away, that's what the fishermen say.
Our supposed visit to a Ghana beach in Accra had been rescheduled quite a few times. When the visit finally came through, we found all the wait was worth it. As soon as we got there, we placed our lunch orders in a cafe that reminded me of a fish and chips place I used to frequent in Harlem, New York. The delectable aromas emanating from the wild, freshly caught fish tantalized my palate and gave me a deeper appreciation for my sense of smell. That Harlem cafe could not hold a candle to the fresh fish at this Ghanaian cafe. While we waited for our food to arrive, we talked over the rest of our plans in Accra before we'd head for Cape Coast. Some of us decided to take a stroll along the shore. Tyrese and Nate found a scenic spot on the rocks facing the ocean where they stopped and sat to enjoy Ghana's beautiful ocean view. Adeshima and I preferred to walk, dodging the waves along the way. Soon we arrived at a Ghanaian fishing village, just when the fishermen and women were returning with their morning catch. They exhibited wonderful cooperation and collective camaraderie as they got the boats on shore. Whenever a boat would come in, the people on the shore would gather and pull the boat out of the water. Their rhythm and timing was amazingly in sync. It was astonishing to watch. When the nets were pulled from the boat and dropped on the shore, they were bursting with hundreds of fish. The boats were constantly arriving. The villagers were unrelenting in assisting one another. The children played and worked alongside the adults. There was jovial conversation and laughter, and so much love and respect. Watching them inspired me beyond my expectations. After frolicking along the beach shore, we walked back to join the other poets for lunch. I smiled, reflecting on my lovely day. I was so smitten by the experience that I would not have minded spending the day on the beach, just savoring the seafood. Then I submerged myself in the ocean and enjoyed jumping the waves.
Fish away, fish away. That's what the fishermen say. Fish away, fish away. That bright and sunny day. That bright and sunny day. That bright and sunny day.
Ashe. Thank you so much. Thank you for the words and just the soothing rhythms. And thank you also for those big smiles. You two come with a suitcase full of smiles, and I appreciate it. Next up is going to be the Litany of Sacrifice with Mama Michelle and Baba Damani. Please come forward.
Good morning, my fellow Netaroos, meaning that I recognize that you all, meaning that I recognize that you all embody principles and aspects of the divine. Our esteemed scholar Anthony Broder said we didn't use the word God. That was an Indo-European term. We used the word netters, principles and aspects of the divine. So principles like honesty and integrity, love for humanity is all aspects of the divine. So I recognize that in you all. Anyway, there's a time in our service, moving on, there's a time in our service where we pay our bills, where we make sure our spiritual institutions are solvent and able to carry out its mission. On the screen there is the addresses you can mail your contributions to, or you can use the internet. Personally, I use PayPal. Moving right along. Litany of Sacrifice, here we go. Save us, O Holy One, by your name. Vindicate us by your might. Hear my prayer, divine protector. Listen to the words of my mouth. How can we repay the Holy One for the gifts that have been given to us? We will lift up the cup of salvation and call upon the God of our ancestors. We will fill our, oh, I got a message on my screen. We fill our vows to our Creator in the presence of all our people. Gladly we bring our sacrifices to you. We praise your name, O Amun Ra, for it is good. Umoja, unity. We should strive to maintain unity in family, community, nation, and race.
Kujichagulia, self-determination. We shall define, name, create, and speak for ourselves.
Yajima, collective work and responsibility. We should build and maintain our communities together. Our brothers and sisters' problems shall be ours to solve together.
Ujamaa, cooperative economics. Together we shall build and maintain our own businesses, and together we will profit from them.
Nia, purpose. We should make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community and the restoration of our people to our traditional greatness.
Kalumba, creativity. We shall do as much as we can in any way we can to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than when we inherited it.
Imani, faith, we will believe with all our hearts in our God and our people.
And in the righteousness and victory of our struggle.
Ashe.
Ashe. May we please bow our heads in prayer. O Mother, Father, God, she who is of the Most High, the maker of all that is and shall be, the giver of all our needs, the knower of what is beyond truth. Hear our prayers today, O Ancient One, God of all gods, mighty of the mightiest. For you, Most High, are the solution, and we must solve the problems of the living to obtain our place with you. We ask sometimes in moments of silence, sometimes in our own confusion, how to act. How should we think? What way to feel? What can we do? The way is always lain by words brought to us by our ancestors, said from mouth to mouth for thousands of years, written in the Medu Neter, sung in our songs of God, love, and motherland, and all about the 42 declarations of innocence. I have not. The culmination of a life worthy to be with you, Amun-Ra. With each declaration, in the end, it is its own narrative. Our way is to solve the problems spoken in each declaration. And believe it or not, brothers and sisters, the 42 declarations cannot be mastered all on our own. You will need the help of your brothers and sisters. Some will need the support of the collective, but it starts with a hand giving. Many hands will add to that. And each of us giving to create the space to practice the way. At Wose, bonding together and strengthening our collective and resolve to bring back the ways of our ancestors with Wose's help and practice our ways every day and each Sunday at Wose and everywhere we see ourselves, all by the benefit of Wose and our God Amun-Ra. Come together, my people, I ask, in all ways and all forms. Smite out your ego and stop taking from your neighbor and community that which does not make them better. Bring forth and offer that which seeks to give you earthly matters and sacrifice, and see that less wealth, less beauty, less knowledge given to others makes you stronger, makes our people better. And please do not forget, my brethren, raise high your deeds in prayer and meditation. Be proud, brothers and sisters, that you have sacrificed so that Amun-Ra knows, so that you are clear that what you give meets the needs of the church, meets the needs of our people, and will give you faith and strengthen each of those declarations that you shout out, I have mastered. Walk in the way of Amun-Ra. Walk with us. Ashe, Amen, Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe. Ashe. Asante.
Ashe. Whew. All right. All right. I don't know if you all know, but there seems to be a theme today. And it's about, at least in my mind, I'm not going to say what's going on in your mind, but at least in my mind, it seems to be about unity. At least in my mind, it seems to be about coming together. In my mind, it seems to be about collaborative efforts. In my mind, it seems to be about everybody getting across the finish line, right? And I love it when it happens because we don't plan it. You know, we're all coming up with our different things that we need to say and do in order to have a celebration, and Amun-Ra decides that there's a bigger plan that we are a part of, and we're just playing a part in it. And then we do that. Next up for you is a man who had the pleasure to spend time with, man who I've had the pleasure to spend additional time with in these past few weeks as we went all over Kemet, all over the motherland, all over home. A man who I've had the pleasure to learn from, celebrate with, have joyous moments with, have happy tears, sad tears, all of the above. And we are so grateful that he is a part of our community. That man is Manu Ampim. And I am going to bring forward Professor Manu Ampim to talk about whatever it is that he wants to talk about. We gonna listen. That's what we gonna do. So Professor, if you are ready, please come forward.
Off camera.
Yes, yes, yes.
Good morning, good afternoon, we'll say, good evening, wherever you may be, folks. Good to see everybody and appreciate the service and the contributions this morning, this afternoon. And so it just so happened that I'm on the schedule today and I appreciate it. I think Brother Ty might have been, as last year, maybe expecting something about the 4th of July, but I told him folks can check out the tape from last year for that one. But since we're just returning from Kemet, I have some reflections that I think that will be useful for Wotse. And I was glad that Sister Rana and Sister Michelle and Baba Sidney and Mama Connie were able to join me as well this year, as well as some other people to really find out what's happening, what's new in the world of classical Kemet. So in the few minutes that I have, I wanted to just give some reflections as I kind of reflect on some of my notes, some of my photographs and video footage that I've actually been taking now for more than 30 years of doing systematic primary or firsthand research out in the field. And I first started to do the field work in Kemet itself back in 1990 when I went to 42 different sites. I went to museums, pyramid sites, temple sites, tomb sites, and ancient residential sites so that I can learn as much as I could in following in the footsteps of, as Wose is very familiar with, Chancellor Williams. And I decided that I needed to start from scratch and really evaluate and reevaluate everything. And I learned quite a bit back in 1990, more than several decades ago. But, you know, this past couple of weeks, I saw some extraordinary things as well. I've actually seen more changes in Kemet. I know a few of you have gone and you've had your own experiences, whether in the distant past or more recent past, but I personally saw more changes in Kemet since I was there right before the pandemic 4 years ago than in the 3 decades that I've been going. And so I have a lot of information that I want to share with folks about the direction of Kemet. And it's clear that the theology of Wose, when it was founded 4 decades ago, was really based on the spiritual tradition of ancient Kemet. Some say Kemetic. I say Kemetian because Kemetian is more consistent with how we look at countries and people that belong to those countries. So we'll say Egypt or Egyptian or Ethiopia or Ethiopian or Ghana or Ghanaian. So I say Kemetian to be more consistent linguistically. But people say Kemetic is not right or wrong, it's just consistent linguistically. Nevertheless, I've seen so many changes that I want to reflect on those changes and share with you what I now have, what I see as the new direction for those that want to continue to take Kemet out of Africa and take Black people out of Kemet. And then those that had a chance to join me, I want them to just give some reflections so you'll have an idea from them about what's happening. So I'm just going to share my screen and just show a few slides, not as many as normal, but I just want to point out to you that in my brief reflections, I want to mention to you the future of Kemet. We talk about Kemet and we look at it as a great classical African civilization, and it certainly was that. And it has had an astounding impact on the world. But I want to look at where we are today and the future of Kemet, because this is, at the core of WOSE's ideas, studies, and beliefs since its founding more than 40 years ago. So we should be on top of what's happening today so we can not only predict the future, but to help shape and mold and correct and direct things as they move forward. So I certainly don't have to share with WOSE that Kemet is in Africa, but we do have to reemphasize this. And I've told people I have a special relationship and communication with each pilot to make sure that no matter where I'm going in Africa, that we touch down in Kemet so I can check and double check as a researcher to make sure that it didn't detach itself from Africa and float off to the Middle East somewhere, because it's pretty easy for people to be confused geographically. And if you can't get geography straight, and if you can't get a map straight, then you can't get history straight. But you should be aware, by the way, folks, if you weren't, and I pointed out to people on the tour, when you fill out the visa card going into Kemet, as we call it, based on the ancient language and name, that the official name of the country, the official name, and it's been this official name for many years, is the Arab Republic of Egypt. That's the official name. So if you look at the visa card that people have to fill out, numbers 8 and 10, they're very clear that this is the Arab Republic of Egypt that you're entering into. So anyway, now, when we take people, it's not just to go and have photo ops, but we go to at least 30% more sites and monuments than any other educational tour. And the reason why I emphasize that is because it's a deep study. It's a deep analysis. It's a deep understanding to make sure that when it's all said and done and people are back home and the great experiences behind them, that they remember those in-depth experiences that will not go away. And so this is why we spend so much time in the field, because a lot of times it is not the great monuments that always have the enduring impact. It's the great legacy with even smaller monuments, smaller artifacts. For example, we'll go to monuments that no one really seems to know, other than a few researchers, the significance of them, because they're not grand structures per se, but they have inscriptions that gives us insight about Kemet. So we go to a number of sites and a lot of locations within the sites as well. But it's not just going to the sites, but it's to learn about the contributions. And this is what inspired me many years ago, is to follow the direction and insight that WOSE helped to provide in order to look at those contributions that still provide the foundation for human achievements in the arts and sciences. So whatever discipline we look at, we can embrace Africa as making a unique contribution in these fields. I'll just highlight a couple of the contributions, and then I want to really look at what the future is and things that we should be aware of and that we should be on guard against. And then I would like to have a few of those that join us to give reflections. So this is one of our images, and there's nothing greater than to take an image in front of arguably the greatest temple structure in the history of humanity. Ramses the Great, Ramses II of the 19th dynasty, when he constructed this added to his legacy as the single greatest builder in the history of humanity. And when he's building on this scale, 65-foot high statues carved from the mountain that you see behind, most guides are intimidated by Ramses' manhood. You know what they normally say? That Ramses was ego tripping. He was a megalomaniac. I stopped the guys around me from talking crazy like that. So nope, hold up, wait up. You're just intimidated when you have an African who's building on that scale with that level of confidence. And he's building in the tradition of his ancestors. And he's building on a level that we haven't seen before, even though he's building in a great tradition of many builders. So this is arguably his greatest monument. But even if you took this one out, you see other great monuments as well. So we go up and down the country, from Cairo down north to Luxor in the middle of the country to Aswan up south. So one of the things that we always have to make sure we do is to teach people geography. There's no such thing as down south. No, when you go south in Northeast Africa, we're going up south. So up south in the Aswan area is very important. Then we go down to the Cairo area. So when I'm doing the field work, this is always important to keep our orientation straight and to make sure those that are joining me on the educational tours keep their orientation straight. We make sure that people know a little bit about the language and why we call it Kemet by introducing them to the Medu Neter, which is important. But I want to emphasize why it is that we focus on Kemet. This comes up sometimes in group discussions. This comes up sometimes on social media. This comes up sometimes in conferences. And when I lived in England in 1989 and 90, the brothers and sisters there wanted to know, what about this African-centered movement in the US? What was the core elements? What was driving this movement that had a global impact on Black people around the world as we embrace classical African traditions? And so I began to share with the brothers and sisters in London what it was at the core of focusing on Kemet. So there's 4 reasons why we focus on Kemet. And the first reason is pretty obvious. It's the greatest manifestation of African culture and genius of which we know. We don't know anything that's at a higher level that manifests itself at such a profound level than Kemet. And this is why we focus on it. It's not that it's the first or anything like that. No, it's just the greatest manifestation of African culture and genius. So that's one critical reason why we focus on Kemet. Another reason is that it's the oldest of the African civilizations, which lends itself to systematic study. I didn't say it's the oldest African civilization. I said it's the oldest one, which lends itself to systematic study. So we can look at Kemet in all aspects. Of course, not all details are known, but enough details are known to give us an opportunity to systematically study the writing system, the mathematical genius, the architecture, the medical system, the social organization and the high status of women, and the central role of ancestors. We can study various aspects of the civilization in Kemet, and we can look at it and study it systematically. That's why we place more emphasis on Kemet than, let's say, West Africa, Ghana, Mali, Songhai, or the Nok culture. This is why we spend more focus on Kemet rather than, let's say, Great Zimbabwe. This is why we spend more time focusing on Kemet than Nubia or Kush. It's not that it's older, it's simply we can systematically study it in its details. A third crucial reason why we focus on Kemet and have done so for decades is that it's the oldest of these classical African civilizations that we can literally look at in the pure form. We don't have to go through Greek writers. We don't have to go through Roman writers. We don't have to go through modern writers, Arabic writers, or any other writers. We can look at the civilization and the details in its pure form. So this is why it's important to be able to read the Medu Neter in its original and to understand the nuances of the language as it changes over time. So Medu Neter, divine language, divine script, the holy writing, is what the Greeks obviously later called a hieroglyphic, but we don't have to go through that. We can look directly at the evidence. So when I'm out in the field, I'm in the field at pyramid sites, at temple sites, tomb sites, interpreting the rituals, the ceremonies, and the glyphs so that folks can know that we can literally read the inscriptions and we can interpret the important rituals and ceremonies in the pure form. We don't have to go through any filter, and this is why it's very significant. And the fourth and final reason why we focus systematically on Kemet is what the multi-genius Sheikh Anta Diop said some years ago, and that Kemet has to serve as the historical foundation, the root, the base, the pedestal for all of the other African cultures and contributions, and it has to provide the foundation for modern African Renaissance, a revival period, but it has to have a foundation. So as we look at African civilizations, they typically are suspended in midair, and what Kemet does is give it a foundation. So Kemet has to serve the same role as a historical foundation as does ancient Greece and ancient Rome serve for modern Europeans. If you think about it, is that there's always this systematic reference to Rome. Why? Because they use Rome as the basis, as the foundation for the development of the modern Western culture. Even the Roman Senate provides a direct foundation and format for the current U.S. Senate, even the name they use. So it doesn't matter if it's in government form or language or whatever it may be, in math, is always referring, or even the calendar system is referring back to old Europe, and the foundation is ancient Greece and Rome. We too must have a historical foundation that helps us to see Kemet as that foundation. But these are the four reasons why we continue to focus on Kemet. Some people think was too much focus on Kemet. Not at all. There is twice as much focus. I would say probably 3 to 4 times more focus on Kemet by others and outsiders than African people. We just simply need more people to continue or to start doing the systematic work. And for example, if you want to know who dominates Kemet, then take a look at the American Research Center in Egypt, or ARCE, and you'll see who's really controlling the research and the interpretation of Kemet. So whenever you see the docudramas on the History Channel, A&E, National Geographic, and the people doing those interviews, if they're not local Arabs, such as Zahi Hawass doing interviews, it's people within the American Research Center in Egypt's network that control the research. They dominate the funding and they dominate the interpretation of Kemet. So we have a lot more work to do, but please know that this is the foundation for why we focus on Kemet. And of course, it makes sense. I don't need to emphasize this, that we're looking at, and we understand these are among the greatest monuments in the history of humanity, built for Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. And so when you look at the height of human achievement, we have to go to Kemet and we go down to the Giza area to see these mighty monuments that still today, they loom in majesty, very much so. And all the world fears time, but time itself fears the mighty pyramids. And so to be able to experience this is extraordinary. It empowers people. That's why I say, really, if you are going to Kemet, you really don't need a round trip ticket. You only need a one-way ticket because you can fly back on enthusiasm and excitement alone. Because you did it with math on a very sophisticated level. It's obvious the level of math involved, the math, the geometry involved. It's absolutely extraordinary, but this would be a completely different presentation if we focus just on the mathematical skills, if we focus just on the ability to quarry rocks that are 2 tons, 10 tons, 15 tons. Can you imagine quarrying and moving and transporting 100-ton blocks of stone that even today still confound the imagination? But that's what we're looking at here. So of course we're going to look at Kemet and embrace it. So this didn't change. This was extraordinary this month, as it always has been for the several decades that I've been going to Kemet. And can you imagine over 3 million stones put in place and held together over millennia? This is the kind of greatness that we're dealing with here. And I'm just going to show you. So one of the things I pointed out, this is why we have to do work out in the field. 99% of the people think that the pyramids are tombs. This has nothing to do with being a tomb. Africans, for example, don't bury ancestors hundreds of feet above ground. There's no evidence, for example, that this upper chamber is the so-called is the king's chamber. This was not a burial. There's no attempt for a burial. And there's no evidence that the chamber below it was the queen's chamber. These are Europeans who figure, well, the chamber below it is a little bit smaller, so this must have been for the queen. You know what my question is? Based on what? Documentation beats conversation. This makes no sense whatsoever. Even the subterranean chamber, no evidence of a burial. This has much more to do with their elaborate calendar system and astrology and astronomy. But because outsiders don't know the African sophisticated system of science, they figure, well, we don't know, but it must have been a burial. Nope, not a burial at all. But and then, you know, of course, there's the greatest statue on earth, Haru and Makhet. So we all are familiar with this statue, whether we've gone to Kemet or not, we've seen it. And people are in awe that this is the single greatest statue in the history of humanity. Of course, we're going to embrace this kind of manifestation of human genius because it comes from the African historical experience, and it still today confounds the world. Even as we look at this statue thousands of years later, it still has the same kind of power and might that it always has. And, you know, there's monuments such as the Step Pyramid. People go, do you know when people go to Saqqara, it's amazing, and the group can verify this, you don't even see people. You don't really see people understanding the significance of the site. Yes, they'll go to the Step Pyramid, which is the first stone superstructure in the history of humanity, about maybe 4,800 years ago. And by the way, these are people in boxes. This is in the box here, over 200-foot monument. They're going to open this up now for the first time in decades. There's been work done to try to stabilize this structure, but people will go to Saqqara and and experience this great monument, but there's so many other pyramids and tombs in the area that most people don't go to. But it is Zoser who commissioned the building of that great structure. We also, of course, in the Wolsey community, we know about the books of wise instruction, those books that represent African wisdom text, the wisdom writing. It's in the category of didactic literature, meaning literature to teach a moral lesson. And there is so many writers, but we look at the first among, well, this is the first text within a pyramid, the Unis text. Notice the beautiful Medu Necher, the harmony, the balance and proportion. But in addition to that, there's the tomb of Ptahhotep, who wrote the first book in the history of humanity. And to go and see Ptahhotep in his tomb and the beauty and the power and the might, and not only read about it, but to experience it. This is what makes it special when people are in the field in Kemet. And so as we learn about the Ptahhotep during his time, during the Pyramid Age, his tomb is there in Saqqara. Hardly anybody goes because it's just not on their agenda. They think maybe it's too much, it's too long of a day. For me, nope, it ain't too long. It's absolutely mandatory. But there's nobody more significant than the great Ptahhotep in his writing, because this was a school text used throughout Kemet. The way we know that is because there's different versions of the same book of Ptahhotep that's been found. 37 lessons on ethical conduct, moral conduct. How do you show wisdom in social relations? How do you respect your elders? How do you avoid conflict? How do you make sure your name goes forth in good order? And Ptahhotep teaches these lessons. And so you have black and red. Whenever you see red, by the way, it means that it's a new lesson. So 37 lessons, and Ptahhotep taught not only about Ma'at in his wisdom text, but he also talked about, and this is very significant, the word sejum. Sejum means to hear or to listen. The most common verb used in classical Kemet was the verb sejum, which means to hear or listen. So they associated Ptahhotep and other writers, Kajimni and Amenemope, so many other writers in the wisdom text tradition. They speak about listening well, hearing well, and they associate that with the wise person. But on the other hand, the ignorant person, they always says, is the one who does not hear, who does not listen. So it's always a contrast between the wise person who hears well and the ignorant person who does not listen and who also talks to their detriment. And there's so many different things that I can show you that's significant about African contributions to humanity. So why does Manu Ampim, why do we go to the tomb of Mereruka when others don't go? It's because it's not just to pile on monuments, it's to give insight that will make a significant point about the African historical contributions to humanity. It's not just the tomb of Mereruka, it's a joint tomb of Mereruka and his wife, Hertwatet Ket. So in his tomb, we see his wife, Hertwatet Ket, playing, as you can see, the harp to her husband. She's in her linen outfit. He's fully dressed with his kilt, his official symbols. But guess what? This is a scene of intimacy. And the way we know that it's an intimate scene simply because this scene is taking place on this structure here, which is a bed. Other than that, you would not even know it. This is the scene of intimacy. Look at the high level class that they show as husband and wife are intimate versus others who are graphic, who are prone to pornography and other nonsense, but you don't see it in Kemet. This is why we have to see this scene and understand the entire context of the tomb, even Kajimni and and the significance there. But just in the interest of time, one thing that's also stands out and very important, and I'll really say something about with the future of Kemet as I see it, is that the temple at Abijú, this is temple of Seti the First at Abijú. This is the holy place. This is the holy place where people in ancient Kemet will go for a pilgrimage. And when you go to this site, there are 7 shrines. And this, whenever anybody's with me, particularly anybody from the spiritual community and from Wolsey, I point out that we have to know the significance of these shrines at Abijú. These are shrines to the different deities, Asar, Set, Heru, Amen, and you can go down the list. but there are rituals and ceremonies that gives us clear details of the entire sequence of these ceremonies, and including the Immaculate Conception. This long predates Christianity. You see that there, and is well documented as Asar impregnates a Set, and then there's the Immaculate Birth of Heru. This is depicted, but there are rituals such as this. You see on the left, and this I've not once in all of the times I've been to the temple have I seen people really point this out, even when people, different groups come through, but this is very significant. When you see Seti here on the left, notice that he has a jar of ointment in his left hand. He's dipped his finger in the ointment. He's anointing the creator, the God, in a very important ritual. And you see these ceremonies and you see them, there's a particular variation of the ceremony right here at the time of Seti in the 19th dynasty. They issue and show ceremonies that are slight variation of other ceremonies. And it gives us insight of the broad range of rituals and ceremonies that should provide the foundation for a lot of our rituals, because we see them on the walls, literally. And it's not just seeing the scene, but we can also, of course, read the Medu Neter inscription, but you see this kind of anointing that takes place. It's important. Also at the same temple, you have Seti on the left and his son Ramses the Great, Ramses II. I showed you his temple a little earlier, where you have father who's teaching son to respect his ancestors. And you see this gesture here, you see it on the left, and this is the whole panel here. Seti, you see his arm. Whenever an arm is outstretched in this manner, you can see it here, and he's burning an incense, it means that an important announcement is being made. Whenever an important announcement is made, you see that hand to indicate that this is important, what he's explaining. So what's happening is that Seti has his young son under his tutelage, and what his son is doing, and he and his son, they're standing before 76 royal ancestors that predated them up to the 19th dynasty. He's telling his son, these are your ancestors. These are your royal ancestors, and you must respect them and respect the tradition. 76 ancestors. And if you look carefully, you maybe can notice it here, maybe a little bit better here in this scene, this image. Notice that Ramses, how do we know that he's young? Not simply because he's smaller, no. It's because he's got the side lock of hair. That's the indication of youth, that he's younger, but he has in his hands 2 papyrus scrolls. These scrolls has the names of those ancestors. These are very significant rituals that we can draw from. And I just want to share a couple other things as I close here, and give you my reflections on the future of Kemet. But also, if you look at inside of museums, there are some powerful images that are still there, like a Amenemhet III. The wigs, I checked, the wigs are still there from the 21st dynasty priest. Clearly, these are Afro wigs, no doubt about it. When they wore wigs, they only wore wigs with human hair. There's Mentuhotep II, he's there, very powerful. There's Senwosret, very, very powerful images. And so you see those scenes, but I noticed that Hesi Ray is gone. I looked for him. There's no more Hesi Ray in the museum. The first known dentist in the history of humanity. So he quietly exited, who knows, stage left or stage right. The fact is that Hesi Ray is gone. And this is one of the most powerful men in the history of Kemet, one of the most important men in the history of the medical field, particularly dentistry. His images are gone now. I only suspect that they may be in the new museum that is yet to open, who knows. Also in the museum, here's what's being promoted now. More and more, they've gotten better at the misrepresentation. So room 32. So here's what's happening now with the futures, not only the great contributions and the African people at the root of the contributions, but there's also a scheme afoot. And that is in the room 32, which I've always called the forgery room. You have the statues of Rahotep and Nafret in the middle of the museum floor for emphasis. They're being emphasized. And so people always go to room 32, they go to the middle of the floor to see 2 of the greatest forgeries in the history of ancient African archaeology. These are bogus. They are absolutely fraudulent. Some of you may know that the great late Ivan van Sertima, He published my work back in 1994, the book Egypt, Child of Africa, edited by Van Sertima. You see my essay is in there on the Rahotep and Nafret forgeries. These are real historical figures, yes, but the statues that you see here are fake and phony. They were created in the early 1870s by racial conspirators who are bent on changing the Africoid identity of the people. These are phony. And Van Sertima was stunned when he had learned about my research to expose what others had assumed were just light-skinned so-called Libyans. Scholars had assumed that until people began to look at my work. And so what's wrong with these, you might ask? Everything's wrong with them. The skin color is too light. There's no affection between husband and wife. They have individual seated statues with headboards. You never see that. These are rules that you never see any other samples or examples like that other than these. So they're fake and they're phony, to say the least. And so that's why these are in the forgery room, as I call them. Rahotep is the only statue in the world with a gray mustache. Look at the uneven paint. The conspirators weren't even able to blend the paint evenly. The conspirators forgot to give him a wig. Also, Rahotep and Nafret are among 11 statues in the world, only 11 out of hundreds and hundreds of thousands that have blue-gray eyes. So many things are fake and phony here, including the modern conspirators were rushing when they were pushing this to the market, that there's now paint dripping down the right side of his neck. They were rushing. Can you imagine you're carving statues for eternity and they couldn't even stop the paint from dripping? This is phony. This is silly. How are you going to have a European couple in the middle of the African royal family during the Pyramid Age? But that's what we're dealing with here. So what's happening these days now is I noticed some changes. So my book, by the way, will be Modern Fraud, to expose these great forgeries. So that's a project that's in front of me, and we'll expose these forgeries. There's rituals and ceremonies we need to know about, like the Siman Tawi. We can maybe discuss that later, because people talk about Egyptian yoga. This is not dealing with yoga at all. We'll discuss it later. And there's Amenhotep III, one of the greatest builders in the history of Kemet. You see powerful images like this, but also here's what's happening. At the Luxor Temple, which is part of his great works in the entire region of Waset, so-called Luxor, or what the Greeks called Thebes, you notice that here is a Tekken, so-called obelisk. And this is a close-up of it here, but the one on the right is gone. It was stolen. And a lot of the artifacts and items stolen, no one was hiding the theft. So for example, this has been well documented what happened to this Tekken, or so-called obelisk, how it was taken from the temple and carted off to Paris in Place de la Concorde. That's where it is today. And so, and this is part of it. They even show on the base of this monument in Paris how they took it from the temple, how they dismantled it, shipped it, and carted it off to Paris. This is it here. So no one's even hiding the grand theft that has taken place. And you have more of these structures outside of Kemet than in Kemet itself. In fact, in the city of Rome, there's 13, and that's more. So the group will know that we saw 12 in the entire country. There's more in Rome. There's one in London. There's one in the Central Park in New York. You see the one here in Paris. And now I want to end and show you this, because this really, to me, is what's happening with the future of Kemet and why we should be focused on making sure that these trends don't continue. The great Hatshepsut, Queen Hatshepsut, who ruled for 20 years in the 18th dynasty, she's one of the great builders. She's not unique, but she's the 4th out of 5 female rulers. 4th out of 5. This is one of her great monuments, Desher Desheru, or the sacred of the most sacred. This is a 3-tier mortuary or funerary temple, and the back was closed. The 3rd tier was closed for years because you had an archaeological team supposedly restoring. They were supposedly restoring this. And the Polish Egyptian conservation, archaeological and conservation project, they didn't restore anything, but what they engaged in is systematic fraud. It was amazing when this was open. And if you see this tier in the back, you can kind of see some statues there where every one of the statues have been doctored up and changed. So Hatshepsut, clearly a very powerful female ruler. that's well documented, well cemented. She was not taking an unprecedented step. Nope, she was ruling in the tradition of other women before her. And so the statues have all been doctored up. They've been changed. They've been scraped of their original dark brown, reddish brown, medium brown paint. And every one of the images have been changed and doctored up in order to de-Africanize her image. So if you take a close look here, this is the original paint. You see it here. The reason why there's no paint around the nose, because this has been systematic recarving and reshaping of the nose to give her not only a nose lift underneath, but also to scrape the paint on both the left and right side to give it a narrow aquiline appearance as opposed to the original broad nose. And this is with every single statue. So I took a lot of new photographs from what I saw 4 years ago. They continue to do doctor up images. And you can see it. You see the original dark paint. Why no paint around the nose? Careful nose alteration. And hardly anybody sees this because you would never think that huge statues like these or any statues would undergo this kind of modern ongoing racial transformation. But if you look carefully, you can see the darker paint, including for the eyes. But when you just take a quick casual view, you don't even really notice it. So this is what's happening. I think one of the great examples is this temple. We took video footage there. So, and I was pointing out specific reliefs on the wall to show that the de-Africanization process has accelerated. And so what we see today, trust me, you're not going to be able to see in another year or two because the ongoing de-Africanization is systematic. It's absolutely criminal. But they don't miss a beat when it comes to the alterations and changes. Another thing that's interesting is that there's a corporation, Inertia, that's been involved with the repackaging of Kemet altogether. So every site has undergone some changes in terms of how it's being presented with new signs, new tickets, and so forth. So now some of you have gone to Kemet, you know that these were like the old tickets that you can see the name of the location and the picture of the structures there, as well as what the cost is in Egyptian pounds. But now, to make it more generic, the pictures are disappearing. So when you see pictures on the tickets, or you see or structures like this at Abu Simbel, this powerful structure built by Ramses, the great builder. But now what you see with tickets are just this, it's just generic. So when you go now, this doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't, it doesn't have any feel. So as images change and the whole presentation of who's at the root of the civilization in Kemet is changing at the same time, the tickets are changing as well, so that now you won't even get the idea of the site anymore, because these are now disappearing because the new company figured, let's put the the code here, you can scan it and kind of go from there. And so I had just one other thing to share, but just really briefly, because I know time is moving on, if I can just ask the crew that joined me, if you all could just maybe briefly give some reflections, just so the Wose audience can share with you on your experience, maybe just 1 or 2 minutes. Sister Rana, Sister Michelle, Mama Connie, and Baba Sydney, if you all can just kind of give what stood out for you really briefly. I appreciate it.
Well, greetings. I'll go first. This is Baba Sydney, MIT Sydney. And one, I just want to say that, and I shared this with Professor Manu, that a professor, a friend of mine, had mentioned a while back that how you really tell the quality of an instructor is through his students. There's so many instructors, you can't get them on a one-on-one, but you look at their students and you can tell the impact that they're having towards their profession in the world. And I would say that Brother Manu's students show that he's just doing impeccable job. Just the range of just personalities and characters that he has fired up and excited about learning about about Kemet, about our history is just incredible, and not just taking it, but they're taking it in and they're doing great notes. So I'll say that first. one of the best trips I've ever been on. And the thing that stood out to me, two pieces is one, the concept that I picked up there and got from Professor Manu is this building for eternity. Everything was set in like building and doing things as our grandparents or parents used to say, just do the best that you can do, just on this particular scale that you build for eternity. And I really love that. And then the other thing, being an old union worker and president of the union, the value that they gave to workers. We were at the granite, it'll be a rock quarry. And nowadays, if someone worked in a rock quarry, they would be probably the lowest of the low as far as a worker, and their value would be very low. And it's like a day labor. There, when they talk about the people who worked in the quarries and they were coming in from hundreds of miles away, they had writings on the wall and they talked about them almost deification, as far as they were engineers, they were very skilled workers, and they were looked upon with high esteem. You're talking about people who are working with their hands. You saw writings on the walls of farmers that they looked at people who worked the land, people who worked with the cattle, almost deification. They honored those workers. We had a young sister who was one of Professor Manu's former students. She was a librarian, and he was able to show written in a hieroglyph where they had a queen, I think it was Sheshet. He could correct my Sheshet was like the deification of a librarian. And I mean, this blew me away, and it really did fire her up, just how they respected work and respected workers. And to me, that was really mind-blowing. I had never thought about anything like that. So really thank you, brother, and looking forward to doing this again. Fine.
Okay, I'll follow up with that. We visited 51, approximately, I think it's 51 different sites in 13 days, or a little less than 13 days. So the whole experience of traveling and doing this tour, this classical African tour with Professor Manu, was just overwhelming, just so much to absorb, but beautiful and complete. We went from north to south. We traveled up the Nile as we went down. We traveled up the Nile. We went to a Nubian village, was one of my personal preferences in terms of experiences, and talked with an elder, Nubian elder, that told us the history of how Nubia was changed forever by conspirators, that and the profound effect it's had on their people in the 43 villages that were destroyed. I mean, the impact of our trip and everything we saw, we are still continuing to process. And if you get the chance to go, and can handle it, because it's not easy, you should go with Professor Manu. We had a group of 19 of us from, I think the youngest person was 25, up to an elder, he has a few years on me in Sydney, Baba Willie Mims, who was here visiting with us today at the service, and his lovely daughter Dana. They both came to service today. And this group of people that came together, we are now a new community. So, I mean, the blessings will continue to flow from this travel experience, and I'm complete.
Whoever's next, Michelle. Yes, I'd like to pass on some of the things that I learned from this, from our trip. You know what? The desert is beautiful. I never really held the desert in the esteem that it should get. And I think, it was the professor who told us, the only natural occurring geometric shape in the desert is the triangle. And certainly that led to the building of the pyramids. But I also was really happy that basically 20 people, including our other Egyptian guides, professor, and everyone who came, gelled so well together. I mean, maybe I just never really believed that we as a people can come together seamlessly. We don't have to orchestrate it or set rules, because we all already individually had the same rules of community, and we used that there in our small group to take care of each other. And I wish in my American life that that would happen more often. I had to go all the way to Africa to see that happen outside of Lose. And I think one of the other biggest things that I took back was, if you want to go to the motherland, you better be prepared. You better be prepared not only in increasing your knowledge about our people and how they live today, but also you need to prepare yourself physically. And that's something that I think we all took away after our minor illnesses or injuries and other self-hurting things that happened to us. And I think mostly it was because we just didn't prepare for what our homeland is like. And we should have been able to adapt better to it during the time that we were there. But we took away so much. I just think my soul grew. It grew blacker. It grew bigger. And I'm hoping over time you'll all see the better part of me because of the trip to Kemet. So thank you.
You're looking pretty blickety, Michelle. Looking blickety black, and I think it's beautiful on you, sister. Since Baba Willie and Sister Dana are here, if they are still here, I would like to invite them to chime in at this time if they would like to. Please, either of you.
Dana, go ahead. This is what, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
I was hoping that I was going to call. I knew it was going to happen, man. I knew it. First I wanted to say that. Okay, first I wanted to say that I am really pleased with the outcome of this educational African trip that I went on. And secondly, it's the first time that I've ever gone with a group of people who are all strangers except for Manu and my daughter, who I knew Manu already, but the rest of the folks I did not know any of them, and the comradeship that we all develop amongst ourselves, and we all looked out for each other. 'Cause I got sick, I got sick, man, and everybody was looking out for everybody. But I would say this, that as the last sister said, that on this trip you have to be prepared. You have to be physically and mentally prepared, because this is not no vacation. I mean, if you want to just go to a couple of sites, the Great Pyramid and some museums, don't take this trip here, because this trip here is a field trip out there in the field. And so you are studying, you're climbing in the tombs and tunnels. I mean everything. Museums. So, but I'm impressed with the knowledge that the professor has, and I call him a master teacher. So if you want to go somewhere, go with him and learn. Then you should go with him. Lastly, I'll say this. I have a whole lot to say, but I was, it's not like reading a book. It's not like somebody telling you, that you be in a secondhand, a secondhand source. But I was a primary source. So I was able to see all those Black folks on those walls, that I had not seen before. I mean everywhere. And that's when I came to the realization that all of Egypt, not just part of it, but all of Egypt was a one-time Black. All of Nubia, all of Kush was one-time Black. But now, when you go to Egypt, everybody is an Egyptian, everybody is a Nubian. But those are not the people that I knew about that was described by Herodotus in 450 BC. But anyway, I'll stop. Dana, go ahead. I'm still there. Manu, thank you,
Can I
good
just
brother.
interrupt just for a moment? I just want to interrupt just really quickly for a moment and say, Baba Willie, would you please tell everybody how old you are? Who you are?
77 years old.
And I
77
want,
years old.
and I'm asking him to
Well, let me say this.
I asked him to say that because he did not miss a single temple, a single pyramid, a single site. Even when we went into crawl spaces, literal crawl spaces, he said, I'm going in there, I'm going to do it. And he was hanging with the 25-year-old. So I just want to say, as Manu said, how you can get a one-way ticket, you can fly back. That's what enthusiasm, knowledge, excitement, propulsion looks like right there, right there. Dana, please come forward and speak.
Well,
Dana, if you want to say something, if not, that's okay.
Yeah, let's leave it right there, Sister Rhonda, because of time. So just please give your brief. I know folks are excited, so we let it go. So let's try to close it out just out of respect for the time service. So Sister Rhonda, if you can give your brief reflections so we can close it out, and then folks can always talk afterwards.
Yes. I'll try to be brief and just say two things. One of them is that the most beautiful thing for me was also the most heart-wrenching, and that was seeing those beautiful shades of brown people on the walls inside of the different pyramids, on the walls inside of the different temples and such, and seeing all of the effort that had been made to remove the color from those people, to see where the color had been taken off of their face and necks, but still remained on their bodies. So I forced myself to take away the knowledge and the love for the fact that I got to see with my own eyes that they were brown, very dark brown, very reddish brown, undeniably Black people. But I also left with my spirit changed in knowing the amount of effort that's going into removing that, and thinking for future generations how by the time they go, if they even go, they might not know that ever existed. That was something that was very troubling for me over a period of several days once I understood that. And I'll just leave it at that, and to honor the time, I'll just leave it at that.
I appreciate the reflections, folks, and MIT Rhonda was asking Brother Willie his age. Willie held it down. What's important, here's what I shared with the group, is that if I had a choice, if I only had a choice to teach youth on the one hand or elders on the other, guess what? I would always choose the elders. You know why? Because the elders influence multiple generations, including the youth. I would always choose the elders because they're going to teach multiple generations. So it's a different idea about how do we continue with the legacy of our work. And so Brother Willie was told by people, don't go in, and he said, you know what, I'm not listening to any of them. And he made it happen through, so I always tell people, don't listen to what anybody has to say. If you're motivated and driven to make it happen, let's go. And it's to go into places and spaces to give insight that others don't have because they haven't been in these areas to recognize a whole nother level of learning. So I appreciate all of those folks who made it happen, including Brother Willie, but everybody in the group made important strides in moving forward, pushing themselves beyond the regular tourist limits to get to an African limit that they hadn't even known about. And so this is what I know people are going to take from the experience. So I really appreciate it. Let me just, remind folks that this is mainly the concern. This is the focus. It's the future of Kemet. And the future of Kemet, guess what? It lies with us. So we're ambassadors. What are we going to share with people? What are we going to direct them to know and understand? And so the future is not anybody other than us. And that's why I believe it's absolutely important for those who've gone to Kemet to make sure that we can encapsulate the most importance of our experience and our photographs, videos, and our experiences, but also to teach and help direct and correct others as we move forward, because there's definitely a goal and a role to change all of the African contributions and to assign them to others. So there's a lot happening at every level, but we can't allow that to happen. So I just wanted to give, some brief reflections, we'll say, from my experience in the field, along with our other brothers and sisters. But there's been more changes in the past 4 years than I've seen in more than 30 years. So we have to make sure that we can help direct these changes so that Kemet remains the Kemet today that we know as a clearly an African civilization, and make sure it remains that in the future. So that's my contribution today, and I want to dedicate it to the man who made a tremendous contribution. That is the great ancestor Harkuf, who in the Aswan area is Harkuf, who gave us 58 lines of his autobiography about how he was somebody who was beloved by his father. He was respected by his mother and loved by all his brothers and sisters. It was Harkuf who gave food to the hungry. He said he gave water to the thirsty, and he took the boatless across the water to dry land. It is the Harkuf example that we embrace as we continue to embrace Kemet as one of the greatest civilizations in the history of humanity. So, Ashe.
Ashe.
Asheo was
Okay, excellent. Welcome back, Brother Manu.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Manu. And at this time, I just want to say to anybody out there who's visiting with us today, who is a friend of a friend, who's been coming and seeing things, hearing things, enjoying what they see, that we welcome you to become a part of our community. Being a part of Wose, the community, is going to give you the opportunity not just to visit with us, but to be an active part, an active contributor towards events and activities like what you experienced today. Professor Manu is one of our long-term members, and his father is also one of our long-term members. He is a professor. I'm not sure of the title of his department, so I don't want to get it wrong, but he is at Contra Costa College. As he said, he has been leading these tours for 30 plus years at this point. There is one already scheduled for next year. So anybody who's interested, please do not be afraid. Yes, know that there's some things that you need to do to be prepared for it, but I'll tell you what, I got there bandaged up, braced up, and injured up, and I made it back okay, and took care of people while I was there at that. So you can get through it. And I would just say, we open the doors right now for anyone who would like to become a part of the Wose community, become an associate member perhaps, rather than a full member. We welcome you to do this in steps. If that's more comfortable for you, you can become a part of our community and learn more about us, a little bit closer up, get a little closer and see what we're about. And then decide whether or not you want to go from there. But we want you to know that the doors are open to you, and we would love to have you as a part of the community. So I cannot see everyone, unfortunately, because I'm using my cell phone. But if there's anyone out there who has interest, you can put into the chat that you have interest in knowing more about Wose and possibly becoming a member, or you'd like to find out more. Please put it in the chat, raise your hand, shake a wing, do something. I'm hungry, so I'm saying a wing. I'm thinking of some wings. Shake a wing, do something to let us know that you have interest. Is there anyone out there? Everybody have eyes for me? And if not at this time, we'll be back next Sunday. Same channel, same time, and we welcome you to come and be a part of our community then too. So again, last chance to shout out. And if not, we're going to go forward with, I believe, Baba Jeff and the invitation. Baba Jeff and Lift Every Voice.
Ashe. And as we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors,
Ashe.
following in the footsteps along the righteous path, knowing that we are one people,
one
aim, one destiny,
one destiny,
one heart,
one
love.
One love.
Calling on the name that our ancestors have said for so many years, let us all say, Ah. You are the most beautiful people on the face of this earth.
I say.